how will the Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley contracts affect NFL coaches and NFL contracts? Because the contract that Brian Kelly got, just in terms of terms and almost the dollars, but we assume he's going to reach whatever incentives are there based on his ability to win wherever he's been, and now he's at LSU. So that contract, 10 years, $100 million, let's just say that was Gruden's deal that got so many people sort of upright in their chairs when he got it from the Raiders, Albert. How do you think that's going to manifest itself?
Well, I think, Rich, the first thing is obviously I think there are going to be some coaches that are going to say, how can I leverage that? And I think we've seen that to some degree with Cliff in Arizona and, what happened with the interest from Oklahoma. So, I think that's the first piece, which is, pretty simple, like, guys at that level. And I think Mel Tucker is the one that got a lot of people's attention, to be honest with you, because, Brian Kelly, has at least won and been to the playoffs. I mean, Mel Tucker, and I think he's I think he's done a great job at Michigan State, but he's been there for 2 years. He's been a head coach for 3. And so I think that was the one that sort of, moved the needle and pushed some of these things in the direction they've gone in. And so I think that's the first piece of it. The second piece of it's way more interesting to me, which is, what did you just see USC and LSU do? Normally, when a school is in that sort of spot, what they'll do is they'll either go to somebody who has a connection to the school, or they'll go and say, okay, like, let's go find the hot group of 5 coach, or let's go find the guy who's at like a Minnesota or a Kentucky or something like that, and let's bring him up and have him at a blue blood. Or let's go get the hot coordinator at Alabama. What did LSU and USC do? They said, the hell with that. We're not doing that. We're going to go to another blue blood, and we're going to steal that blue blood's coach. So LSU steals Notre Dame's coach. USC steals Oklahoma's coach. I think the effect that you could feel in the NFL now, more teams that have openings may be willing to take swings like that. And we used to see this in the NFL. If you go back and you look, like what happened with Bill Parcells in 1997, what happened with John Gruden in 2002, coach trades.
Belichick.
Belichick. And so, like, I think if I'm an owner right now, I'm looking at this and I'm saying there's a little bit of a shallow candidate pool this year just because there's been so much turnover over the last 10 years. Is it worth, if I'm Chicago, calling New Orleans and saying, is there anything we can do to get Sean Payton here? He's from Chicago. You get him in there to work with Justin Fields. Our general manager has a relationship with him. If you're the Raiders and you need a face of the franchise, a leader, do you call Pittsburgh and say, like, hey, is there any way Mike Tomlin might be interested in coming here? And, a lot of this has to be back-channeled and everything else, but, I was talking to, an executive for an NFC team earlier in the week, and, what he said to me is, the interesting part about this is you do have some coaches who may be reaching their natural conclusions in certain places. Like, right? Like, so Sean Payton's been in New Orleans for, I think it's 16 years now.
Yeah, 2006.
And and he doesn't have a quarterback, right? The roster's getting a little older. They've been fighting through cap issues the last few years. Is this just time? Same in Pittsburgh. The general manager, Kevin Colbert, might retire. The quarterback might retire. They may actually wind up having their first losing season, which is an incredible thing, but first losing season in 15 years with Tomlin as a coach. Tomlin has now been there as long as Bill Cowher was in Pittsburgh, which is mind-blowing, right? So is it time for him? Is it just a natural conclusion? So I think if I'm one of these NFL teams, and I think there are a couple of teams that are thinking this way, you look at what happened with USC, you look at what happened with LSU, they went big game hunting. So if you're one of these teams, do you look at it and say, before we go down the normal path and go and get a coordinator or go and get a retread, let's just at least look. Let's see if somebody like Sean Payton or Mike Tomlin is available. It's an interesting idea, I think, that a lot of teams are going to take from what happened over the course of the last week.
And how possible do you think? I know that it's great food for thought, but I mean the Sean Payton one certainly fascinates because he and Pace know each other, and that would be another way for Pace to try and keep his shelf life going in Chicago. But I can't even imagine how much it would cost. Right, that would be significant in terms of draft capital. It wouldn't be just a couple of fourths. Right.
It's complicated, and there's no question. It's definitely complicated. And I mean, look, here's the thing: is you have to find a way to back channel it, right? Because you don't want to go to that team and then go through the process, and then the coach decides, oh well, I don't want to do that. Like that actually happened 7 years ago, between the Browns and Niners with your coach, Jim Harbaugh, where, they kind of gotten down the road where the Browns were willing to send 2-3s to San Francisco. And you remember things weren't good between the Niners and Harbaugh at the time. And Harbaugh decided basically, I don't want to go. I want to stay with the Niners in 2014. So you don't want a situation like that where you go down the road with another team and it falls apart at the end. So you have to back channel some of this. But, yeah, I think, if you're willing to give up draft picks, I think these things can happen. Are they complicated? Yes. Do you have to back channel a bunch of, discussion? Yes. Do you have to work through intermediaries? Yes. But I think it is possible, and the reward could be really big on the back end. The other thing, Rich, can you think of a time in NFL history when teams have been more willing to part with draft picks? You look at, what the Rams have done, right? The Rams gave up 2 first-round picks for a corner. Jalen Ramsey, great player, but 2 first-round picks for a corner. The Texans gave up 2 first-round picks for an offensive tackle in Laramie Tunsil. So I think that's the other piece of it, is that teams are maybe more willing than they ever have been to part with high-end draft capital in order to bring in difference makers. And I think outside of having a great quarterback, there may not be a bigger difference maker in a football operation than a great head coach.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.